But particularly because all of us are leaders of religious institutions and congregations, one of the things that we as a church and a church minister must focus in on is the religious formation too, because that's a prime, aspect of youth ministry. Let's look at some of the numbers. This is the last bit of stat that I'm going to present. Look at the erosion in mass attendance of the entire Catholic population presented by Enfold organization. 75% were attending mass in 1957, and look at the numbers in 2016 when the last stat was available. Only 27%. Almost 70+% are not attending mass, Catholics, by the way. They come from mass or come to church when they are hatched, matched, and dispatched. That's about it. Right? When I was in America, they used to say, we have A&P Christians. A&P is a supermarket. They come for Ash Wednesday and Palm Sunday. And I often used to ask myself, why are the churches packed on Ash Wednesday and on Palm Sunday? Because something is given out. In fact, I lived in New York, and in Grand Central Station, the Franciscans would stand from early morning, 4 o'clock, with ashes on Ash Wednesday. And you walk the streets of New York, and every person was wearing ashes on his forehead, and they'd say, so many Catholics. And there were some who would just go and receive it too, but you still think, that's their mark of being a Christian for a day. Now, if you're looking at the erosion of, church attendance, that's telling a story. Look at this stat. Look at the generational profile of our church in 2016. Those that were born before 1940, we call them pre-Vatican. I don't know how many of you, are pre-Vatican. Those that were born from 1941 to 60 constitute about 33% of the Catholic population. Post-Vatican, those that were born, after 61 until 82, 34%. And the Millennium Catholics are 23%. Now, look at the generations attending Mass weekly or more from 2005 to 2016. Now, look at the Millennium Youth. They are the only ones that have actually increased in attendance, church attendance, which means the young people now, 28% are attending Mass. It's actually a positive sign for us to think about. Even though we are saying and decrying, youngsters are not coming to church. And in fact, that's my grouse against the youth too. The other day, last Sunday, we had Grandparents' Day in my parish. And I went all out and celebrated this day because there were a lot of old ladies and, grandpas who never get to have fun. So there was a lot of dance, a lot of prizes to win. Everybody was getting, something or the other. We played housey. We made them run. We made them dance. We made them sing. Give them a good breakfast because they won't last till lunchtime, All of that fun. And one of the youth asked me, Father, aren't you doing a little too much for them? And the reason was, why are you not giving us equal amount of money for our program next Sunday? We are. Lunch is already sponsored. Somebody sponsored lunch, and I've completely paid for their barbecue tomorrow night. So they're having an entire day's program, and I've given them 20,000 rupees for prizes and for everything, other things that they're doing. In spite of that, they're looking for more because they wanted me to pay for their, sport tournament in Manyata Tech Park where they have to pay per hour to use the facilities. So I said, I'm not doing that. You chip in. Now you see, I'm telling them, if you guys at least attended Mass every Sunday from start to finish, I would not just double, I would triple and quadruple it. But you guys don't attend Mass. These old ladies are there in church all the time. It's because of their prayers that all of you and me are surviving in this parish. Every 3 o'clock, they're doing the Divine Mercy prayer for the parish priest's intentions and for the parish. So I am duty bound to take care of them. So I'm telling them, do it. Might grouse. But the truth of the matter is, while every other generation, the attendance is dropping, youth is picking up. We don't know why. We'll have to study that. I just have the numbers. There must be a phenomenon that we are still not aware of. I think we can take a good look at that. Now, what implications can we draw from this research? Now, what are you experiencing in churches that reflect this? So what do we need to do to welcome our youth back into a relationship with Christ. At the end of the day, like I said, the 3 R's of youth ministry or youth work or youth counseling applies very much to religion as well. Today, youngsters are able to relate to these new age gurus and they have millions of followers. Not that Pope Francis does not have a follower or Bishop Robert Barron. Are you, anyone here following Robert Barron? Yeah. I think he's phenomenal. I absolutely love this guy. Young fellow. He's so dynamic, so well-read. He's like a take-on, Anyway, now you look at how these youngsters are all following the Sadhguru, for example. You look at the number of millions of youth, and most of them are Indian youth. Even that guy from Bidati, what's his name, that cartoon of a fellow? Nityananda. Look at the number of followers he has. For me, he's comic relief. When I feel down, Nityananda is what preps me up. But the truth is, there are youngsters who are listening and following these kind of people. Now, why? We'll have to figure that out. At the heart of youth ministry, if I were to say, what it is, it's simply to experience, to live, and celebrate and share the good news that we are loved unconditionally by God. The biggest experience, the most intense experience any youngster can have is to be in love, to be loved. We're not talking about romantic love, just the fact that somebody loves. Remember the looking glass theory I talked about? For a youngster, just to know that somebody significant knows him or her by name is a good thing, is a big thing, is important. I've recognized so many youngsters, thanks to Facebook, I wish them on their birthdays. They will call, they will message, and they would be so appreciative that I remembered them on their birthday. A simple happy birthday wish thanks to Facebook. My memory is bad. Facebook does all the work. I'm only keying in a happy birthday with a flower, a smiley, or a hug, or a kiss. It makes them happy. Now, when we are talking about this being loved by God unconditionally, this is where a lot of our youngsters are having problems. They do not experience love in life, so it's a no-no in any other realm. So if they don't have love in their life, they're never going to actually accept God as loving them. And first of all, everybody has their own ideas about unconditional love. How many of you believe in unconditional love? Don't even answer. I don't. A lot of times people argue with me and say, what about your mother? I say, my mother loves me because I'm her son. That's conditioned already. If she loves you like she loves me, then it's unconditional love, but she won't. God's love, unconditional love, we say, but we know that that's a reality, that is possible, that God does love us more than our moms and dads do. But how do our youngsters get to understand that? That's the big question. Holy Father talks so beautifully about, ultimately, the good news is about the person of Jesus. And how does this good news play out? What's the good news for our youth today? They were all fascinated by this Achhe Din that was supposed to dawn on us and change our miserable lives into a life of glory. Psst. Flat tire. Our youth are left wondering. And sometimes we do that in the church too. We tell them we're going to proclaim the good news and they come there. We talk them down. We put them down. We think they are a pain in our bottoms. And so, ultimately, the good news is about Jesus, is about the person. Now, at the heart of evangelization is our sharing of experience of the encounter that we have had with Christ. My limited experience has taught me that youngsters who talk about their encounter with their God are getting it right in their lives. Storytelling is important. Facilitating that storytelling is a powerful experience for our youngsters. In youth meetings, when I ask youngsters to share about some of the experiences that they have had, I'll give you one specific example. We celebrated Angels Day, in October, keeping in mind guardian angels and, archangels together. And we talked about, experiences with angels. And I shared a little story from the time I was a kid, when I was in 7th standard. And before I knew, there were at least 8 to 10 youngsters who were sharing amazing stories of, these supernatural experiences that they had, which they believed was an intervention of an angel. And everybody else there, about 60, 70 of them, were looking at each other and were nodding their heads. And I could see that they were all sinking in to the message that was communicated by the storytelling of their friends. So the storytelling experience or the sharing of the experience of that encounter is a wonderful thing. I think we need to facilitate more and more of that. And when we get youngsters for a youth mass, getting them to tell a story is more powerful than the priest telling the story itself. Unfortunately, the new liturgy says only deacons and priests can preach, but we can always get it interactive. Now, if we want to be innovative, joyful, transformative ministers, like the Holy Father tells us, we have our work cut out. Remember, I started this morning and said there are 4 mega trends that are impacting the youth today: globalization, changing demographics, technology, and the values and attitudes. There is a framework that the American Management Association gave for 21st century learning. I'd like to adapt it for our purposes, for our youth ministry purposes as well. I'm sure many of you here are educationalists and you're familiar with the 4 C's. The American Association of Management presented this in 2010, calling it the Critical Skills Survey after an extensive work that they had done with major employers. And they said youth today need these 4 C's. First, critical thinking. Second, communication. Third, creativity. And fourth, collaboration. You look at it anyway, if you want to have a successful, I don't know how you can qualify or quantify successful in ministry, but if you want to have a fruitful ministry and you have your youngsters claiming that they were impacted by the work or the ministry we have done, I think integrating these 4 C's in our work with them would be of great benefit, because this would provide them a wholesome experience. Okay, now when we're talking about creative or critical thinking, it's about helping them to solve their problems in multiple ways, looking at anything that's happening in their life from different perspectives, different dimensions, because that would allow them to come to terms with what's happening and how to evolve a solution to the problem. A lot of times I used to tell my students when they used to come with the problem, I'd say, who started this? So who do you think is responsible for the problem? I'd say, go get that person to solve it. If you created the problem, you can solve it. Why would I have to solve it? The truth of the matter, if we train our youngsters into critical thinking, most of their problems would be solved, really. And that's what's lacking in our youngsters today, because in our educational institutions, we are so focused on finishing up the syllabus and preparing them for the board exams, we have forgotten to teach them some of the basic skills that they require to survive in this competitive world. And I think it's important that we think about that. Today, communication is a big thing. Father was rightly saying about the youngsters. I'm always fascinated when young people talk. When I listen to them and they are able to clearly articulate what's in their head and what they believe and what their aspirations are, I'm just sitting in awe and saying, wow. And today, communicators are able to go the distance. Not long ago, we were all fascinated by this young man from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Kannaya Kumar. We've not heard of him after the elections. I don't understand Hindi much, but I was always fascinated listening to him. And I would sometimes look at the translations and say, wow, this guy will go the distance. I hope he does. And there are not just one. There are plenty of youngsters today who are able to communicate. I think communication is a skill that they need to learn too. And youth ministry does offer that platform. A lot of times people have asked me you're quite confident when you talk. How did it all start? It started when I was a kid. My parish priest was Father Benjamin Voss, God rest his soul. He's long dead. He started when I was even in the 3rd or 4th standard to get me to read for children's mass. And he trained me for a month. He would make me read and read and read, and sometimes he would whack me if I didn't read it right. And he got me to read. And before I knew, I got confident and I was able to face the crowd. And youngsters today ask, how is it possible? I am nervous when I see a crowd. I have stage fear. These are things that we can do. And the church provides them an opportunity. Being lectors, being commentators, being volunteers and ushers, and taking up roles of leadership and ministry. Youth ministry can be, a powerful tool where they are allowed and, develop their skills of communication. The third one in creativity, I don't even have to talk about it. Many of you run beautiful institutions, educational institutions. Look at some of the things that they are capable of. Today, thanks to the technology revolution and the media revolution, we have reality shows. Some of our kids, Indian kids whom we thought, are coming from rural parts of the country, are fascinating the world with their shows and their performances. And everybody sitting back and saying, wow, how's this even possible? Today, perfection seems to be the only thing that they're all attaining and aiming for. So, creativity is something that's their forte. So, why would we not work on it further and give them ample opportunities to get even more creative and dynamic in what they are? Last but not the least, collaboration. It was Mark Twain who said, I have an apple, you have an apple. You give me yours, I'll give you mine. You still have one apple and I still have one. You have an idea, I have an idea. You share your idea with me and I'll share mine with you. You now have 2 ideas and I have 2 ideas. And that's the principle the corporates work on. Gone are those days when the corporates went looking for gold medalists and brilliant, students. Today they're looking for people who can work in a group. And that's why we have teams and team leaders and team coordinates and whatnot. So today, teamwork seems to be the big thing. If you're able to work in a team, fantastic. They were paying these big brains crores, and today they're saying, with that crore, I can get 10 people with 10 different ideas. If one fails, there are 9 more that I can work on. So that's the principle by which the corporate world is working. And I think we need to get our youth to work in groups and facilitate as much as possible group work. And I think the onus is on all of us too, to do a lot of collaborative work. We cannot say, I'll work independently, my congregation will do this and yours will do that. If we collaborate, we can change the world. We can turn it upside down. Now, looking at the challenges and dynamics of youth ministry, I love this quote from JP2 from 1995. Just give it a read. This is what is needed, a church for young people, which will know how to speak to their heart and enkindle comfort and inspire enthusiasm in it with the joy of the gospel and the strength of the Eucharist. A church which will know how to invite and welcome the person who seeks a purpose for which to commit his whole existence. A church which is not afraid to require much after having given much, which does not fear asking from young people the effort of a noble and authentic adventure, such as that of the following of the gospel. I think powerful words from St. John Paul II. We can only ask much after we have given them much. Today, if you looked at our churches and said, who are the most important and most welcome people? Those that are sponsoring. Sadly, it's all boiling down to money. They get prime places, they are mentioned 100 times. These poor kids log it out day in and day out, cleaning and removing rubbish and garbage and keeping the premises clean and decorating and setting up this and that. A casual mention. Thanks to our youth group. We thank our sponsors. Please will you come forward? And then there is a big shawl and a peta and a garland and a bouquet and whatnot. And that's how we've all become. So, let's take a look at today's youth. Now, all of these material that I have here are drawn from what I said, the consultations that we had and the summarizations of all our interactions with youth across the country. Okay, now, this is by no means only our effort. This is an international effort recognized by the Synod Fathers. This is what they summarized and said, that youth is the most generous time. So it's targeted by everybody. They're willing to give, they're willing to share, they're willing to contribute. So everybody wants a piece of youth. starting from commercial marketing to, outreach programs and the church as well. If approached well, youth, this is the best time in their life to be molded, for good or for bad. Because they are at a stage when they are willing, if they are convinced to make those changes. But we need to approach them right. Youth are the best agents of change. They hold the key to the lifestyle of the world. Today, you can see a whole lot of things. I see this happening in my parish all the time. There are these youth, and then we have a junior youth, and then we have the altar service. Sometimes the altar service will come with a weird haircut. And I look at them and say, "Engada appa idha vettin on there?" And they'll say, "Annana paathen." "Where did you get the stupid haircut?" He say, "I saw my Anna, my big brother, one of the youth, they would have gotten a weird haircut." And this kid is immediately like, doing exactly what his older brother does. The young today are capable of a whole lot. Remember, India against corruption. How the movement just surfaced and got so prominent and big, and then it died out because of a lack of leaders. It's a time of never-ending newness and learning about themselves and about the world around. Today, there are a lot of youngsters, particularly if you look at these youngsters who are working for these MNCs and these big corporates, they're forever into training. Have you noticed that? They're always taking these extra, credit courses and learning a new skill, learning a new application, learning a new programming, and taking tests, because that's the only way to survive. And that's the way. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the apps on phone, on the telephones that we have, the smartphones. Udemy is one where you can learn different kinds of skill. You can learn how to Photoshop images. You can learn how to create videos. You can learn anything under the sun, really. So there is a lot of opportunity, and our kids are using a whole lot of these kind of things. Just a couple of days back, I got an email, one of these marketing emails about a program, an app called Elevate. Anybody on Elevate? It's a wonderful thing. It trains your brain. I took an initial test to see, at what level I was. And then it kind of enticed me to take this one. Of course, you had to pay money, like $2,500 for a year. But every day, they send you 5 challenges, cognitive challenges, to train your brain into faster and more acute kind of processing. Okay, and 5 challenges, and they allow you to, send in your key in your answers, and it right away, assesses the results and gives you, your scores and tells you where you can improve. I'm looking at it saying, wow, somebody thought about this, and brain that they have kind of helped, so many people to fine-tune their own cognitions. They possess a spontaneous zeal for values like love, unity, peace, and justice. You can get our youth today for any cause, and they do it most joyfully and most willingly. I remember when, what is it, little girl who was raped and the entire country erupted, not Nirbhaya, after that. That young girl, Afisa, thank you. And we had a protest. Yeah, all we did was WhatsApp and put it on Facebook. Thousands of youth all came with placards and, banners and, these flexes that they had made up in different places, just like that. They were passionate about it. The same thing happened with Nirbhaya too, remember? And so there is a whole lot of zeal that they have about, the different kinds of values that they hold dear. They are the real today and tomorrow. Our future leaders, political, religious, priests, laity are all there among them. We need to keep that in mind. Oftentimes, when you look at youngsters and you see some brilliant ones there, you look at them and say, wow, what's this kid gonna be? I had this rare opportunity of being on this admission panel some time back in St. John's Medical College Hospital. They have a whole week of, testing and recruiting and all of that jazz. And there were some kids right out of PU college, 19 years old, 18, 19 years old. They walk like a doctor, talk like a doctor, do things like a doctor already. And I'm looking at them and saying, oh my God, this kid is going places. You already see that They exude confidence, just like that. And they're so full of themselves in terms of what they want to be. They are. Young people in Asia have long been overlooked, very misunderstood, and literally a world away from the supposed hotbeds of youth culture in the United States and Europe. In reality, however, young people in Asia are the leading light for understanding youth across the world. Today, we are beginning to see youth power in India. I hope the government does not crush our youth. But if they do, they're in for serious trouble. You can't hold them down for a long time. Look at the Philippines. They brought in this unbelievable maniac of a leader, and they're paying the price for it. But there will be an uprising, and it will be the youth that will get them out. So you look anywhere, you see young people. You today are immersed. Father tells me I have to rush a little bit. Youth today are immersed in the practical world of life, its problems, work, and difficulties that I don't even have to explain. One of the things that we need to keep in mind is our youth today have intense experiences, whatever it be, whether it's sadness or happiness, whether it's excitement about whatever, or a disappointment about life itself. Very intense experience. And sometimes this can be a problem, and we need to see how to best work with it. The world of friendship is everything to them. I think I need to say a word or two about this. A lot of times when I go to different parishes, particularly in the Archdiocese of Bangalore, I tell parents, please send your youth to youth groups. Don't give me that excuse that they are pairing up and they are coupling up and they are falling in love. Trust me, I tell them, every third marriage in the Archdiocese of Bangalore is a mixed marriage or an interfaith marriage. And a lot of times parents come and cry and say, Father, I raised him Catholic, I raised her Catholic. Look, she's marrying a Hindu. Look, she's marrying a Muslim. Nothing wrong in that, whatever. But they feel the pain. I say, if you don't allow them to interact with Catholic youth in churches, where will you find a Catholic youth? So what's wrong if they fall in love? What's wrong if they get into a relationship? I think it's up to us to provide that safe environment and to teach them how to socialize, without falling head over heels in love, infatuation and all of that, and then they get into trouble. So it is important for us to recognize that friendships are big. One of the key words in the world of youth is networking. They cannot survive without being connected one to another. We talked about media and technologies. I've talked about the culture of death. A spiritual search is also on the rise, like the statistic revealed to us. Now, another interesting development is localization in youth culture. Now, gone are those days when these big music channels, premium channels like MTV or whatever, played Western music all the time. Today, it's all local music. You listen into MTV, you will find that, almost 80% is local music, which means we are big. We are big, and there's a big demand for what we are. From the national survey, these were the three things that came up, that we need to empower youth. And that is one of the reasons the CAP program was introduced in Karnataka. And some of you, I think all of you are familiar with it. And then youth from underprivileged sections, particularly the Dalit tribals and rural areas, must be given more opportunities for quality education. And I think a lot of archbishops are talking about that, like, inviting congregations to come and start up, schools of excellence in remote areas of the dioceses. Transparency in engaging with youth should be a priority for the church, government, and civic society. Discrimination and favoritism demotivates them. From the Youth Synod, these are the three things. In the church, catechesis, greater emphasis should be given on family values, morality, and greater sensitivity. Church institutions should focus on building competencies among young people, making intervention in the areas of career planning, conflicts, climate change, technology, and media. After educating all our youth, and if they are left without jobs, something's going to be really, really wrong. I think we need to start working on that and help them, make something out of their life. Finally, the church should provide greater guidance and support to young people away from home who have migrated to cities for purposes of jobs and higher education. Today, almost every other kid is migrating from one city to another or from one country to another. So we need to see how best we can do. This is the last one, and I'll stop with this. The changes that youth workers around the country and the world are proposing needs to come in three of the greatest forces that prepares youth for life and work: the family, the church, and the educational system. These are the three areas. Now, failure to equip youth will prepare them will ill prepare them for what is to come into the future. I'll just stop here, and if you have any comments you want to make, any suggestions, any thoughts you want to share with the rest of us, and any challenges